Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, May 10th. Grain markets are a little bit higher this morning. We've got a sharply higher trade in the wheat market, 15 to 20 cents higher. Brian Split is here. Guys, we've got a USDA report today. Let's start off with that.
USDA will release its monthly crop production and WASDE reports here this morning at 11 Central Time. The old crop U.S. balance sheets are likely to feature very few changes. On the global balance sheets, traders expect USDA to make across-the-board cuts with regard to Brazil and Argentina's crops. USDA will release its first new crop balance sheet projections for corn, soybeans, and wheat. The new crop numbers are likely to offer a bearish tone, given USDA's tendency to start with trend crops for both the U.S. and South America.
First off, Brian, when I run the USDA, there will never be a report on a Friday. They'll all be out at like 7 a.m. on a Tuesday so that you've got a whole trading day to digest and some additional time. In any case, do you see anything positive coming out of this report? Because what I see are what are very likely to be bearish looking new crop projections. They're not real, but they're still going to be printed, and it's going to offer a real bearish tone. Big yield projections for the U.S., huge South American crop projections for next year. It's not going to be a good look.
No, I think maybe the old crop balance sheet for corn could tighten up a little bit, thereby reducing the carry-in into the new crop. We know that the acreage number will be the acreage number from the prospective plantings at the end of March. Should be the trend line yield from the February outlook form as far as what they use. So really the main variable on this report to me is how they assess demand for new crop. I tend to think that those demand numbers will actually be bigger than they probably will end up being, just because with the big production, they do typically increase demand as production increases. I think the South American numbers should be friendly, but I don't think they will be, because based on how the USDA has slow rolled the reduction of both Brazilian soybeans and Argentine corn, I don't see them dropping them at the pace that everybody else is expecting for this report either. So new crop numbers will be big, and that should provide a bearish undertone. But I think the trade knows that. But again, it's not guaranteed.
Okay, so when it comes to production numbers, new crop, USDA is going to start with like a 181 corn yield for the U.S. They're going to start with like a 52 soybean yield. For Brazil for next year, the soybean estimate's going to be like 170. It might be higher than that. It's going to be super high. So there's going to be some bearish stuff, but it's not real. It's just like they have to start somewhere, and that's where they're going to start. I don't see that this. I don't see anything like. I don't see a bullish surprise here, but I don't know that the market has to react in a negative way to these negative projections, which again are just projections. They're just guesses. They have to start somewhere, you know.
So to your point, maybe the bullishness from the report isn't the report itself. It's just a positive reaction to a bad data set, a set of bearish numbers. Could be the bullishness of the report.
I think we'll be back to trading U.S. weather probably 45 minutes after the report, maybe less than that. Let's jump to the drought monitor.
So the majority of the Corn Belt received precipitation last week, with some areas receiving heavy rainfall. Drought conditions improved in northern Minnesota, eastern Nebraska, northern Wisconsin, western Kentucky, and across a large portion of Iowa. Conditions also improved in both northern and southern Missouri. The High Plains also received rainfall last week, and drought conditions improved across northern and northeastern North Dakota and central and northeast Kansas. A lack of moisture caused conditions to worsen in southeast Kansas and northeast Oklahoma. When we look at the percentage of U.S. areas experiencing drought, corn country, 14%, soybeans, 11%, winter wheat, 28%, spring wheat, 15%, and cattle country, also 15%.
There's not a big red spot in Iowa anymore. So I think we're to the point now where from this point forward for the next couple weeks, rain is a bad thing because we've got some delays.
Yeah, I mean, I think back a year ago, and those drought numbers were about 40%, 35 to 40% higher for all of those different products than we are currently. So drought is not the concern right now. The market is talking about delayed planting. And, you know, I had some guys in Iowa text me yesterday morning, another 1.5 to 2 inches, depending on which farm they were looking at. So it's been tough. But it's funny how I'll get a phone call from a producer and say, we just got another 2 inches of rain, buy some corn. And then the very next phone call will be a different producer in a different part of the country. I just got all my corn in, let's sell some corn, right? So it's like the mentality right now is really just backyarditis for sure.
Reports when it comes to planting are highly variable. The weather forecast is a mixed bag. This is the next 7 days, and this is the government map. So this blue stuff is like maybe up to an inch of rain. So not super heavy. When you look at the Euro and the GFS and the side-by-side, there is some model divergence, but it does look pretty obvious that the western part of the Corn Belt into the northern central plains are going to be dry for a week, the way that it looks. So Iowa, Minnesota, Dakotas into Nebraska, those areas are going to be drier. And I know that they've caught a lot of rain and they're going to need some time to dry out. The Eastern Corn Belt is going to be more of a mixed bag. You look at Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, it's going to be some rain, but it's going to be scattered. So there's going to be areas that plant. There's going to be areas that don't plant. If you guys have planting updates, again, drop them in the YouTube comments here.
A La Nina weather pattern is expected to develop later this summer. According to NOAA, the current El Nino weather pattern is fading and ENSO neutral conditions could develop as soon as next month. Evidence shows that La Nina is currently developing. La Nina typically causes above average temperatures across the U.S. In the summer. NOAA has also forecast this summer to be drier than normal for a large part of the western and central portions of the country. Warmer temperatures combined with a lack of precipitation could worsen drought conditions.
Brian, I'm not smart enough to understand this. I don't think long-term weather forecasts have any bearing on how traders act whatsoever. Do you know anything about this? Do you have any summer weather predictions, or are you like me and you only look at the next 5 days?
Yeah, I don't even know if I look at the next 5 days. I just turn to Jim and be like, "Hey, what's the weather say?" No,
Yeah.
but I think this means that you're going to go through a short-term period of concern about planting delay. This type of headline will lead to a market probably in late June where we start to price in the what if it is hot and dry, and I think this type of setup right now, timing wise, leads us to where we get a seasonal high when we typically would, probably mid to late June, if I had to guess.
This is the specifics from the NOAA website. A transition from El Nino to ENSO neutral is likely in the next month. La Nina may develop in June to August, a 49% chance, or July to September, a 69% chance. I mean, coin flip for summer. I mean, I don't know. It's a headline. I heard people talking about it. I don't think this makes any difference. And you could do what you did last year. You could get really dry, and if you catch 3 rains in July, that's a crop. So even if what they predict, if it's going to be hot and dry or whatever, even if that happens, you could catch the timely rains and you could still end up with big crops.
Right. I think people, if you think back to just shortly after last summer and into fall, a lot of people are like, well, we're never going to rally on a drought again because of the crop that we raised. And so you're absolutely right with the genetic stacks that we have right now. If you get some timely rains, it is a crop making rain. And so, is a 49% chance enough right now? If I'm a fund manager and I'm short and I'm reading this, is that enough to make me want to aggressively cover more shorts? No, it's not.
Okay, the statement, the thing that you've heard from people about, oh, drought doesn't matter anymore. Drought matters. If we didn't catch those rains in July last summer, corn would have been $8, and it just happens that we did, and it happened at the right time. The drought still matters. It does.
I think about conversations I was having with Matt last year in June and how dry it was in Illinois, and Matt was concerned, right?
There's concern.
He was thinking corn was going to be under 180 bushel corn. And then he caught a rain, and then it was, well, I think it could be 200. And then he caught another rain. He's, well, I think we're back to 220, right? And so the timing of those rains really saved the crop.
If those rains didn't happen, it would have been off to the races, and we'd be in a totally different environment right now, but we're not.
U.S. corn and soybean export sales increased last week. Net corn sales were reported at 35 million bushels, up 17% from the previous week and up 23% from the prior 4-week average. Mexico was the largest corn buyer for the week. Net soybean sales came in at 16 million bushels. The print was up 4% from the previous week and up 21% from the prior 4-week average. Unknown destinations were the largest soybean buyers for the week. Net wheat sales were reported at 2 million bushels, down noticeably from the previous week, but up substantially from the prior 4-week average. South Korea was the largest wheat buyer for the week.
Brian, we have a soybean problem. Current marketing year soybean sales are the second worst of the last 10 years, and new crop soybean sales are the worst in like 20 years. And China has not bought one single cargo of U.S. soybeans for new crop delivery for the first time seasonally since 2005. It's early. It's maybe, is it too early to get concerned about this?
I think there's two ways of looking at this. And so the glass half empty would say, all right, China's not buying, and we're at a problem because the pace of buying, we should already see at least a little bit on the books. You know, you go back over the last decade, maybe it's 500,000 tons, maybe it's 1 million to 2 million tons on the books by this time of year. And so the pace analysis would say, well, this is very bearish. Now, the glass half full would say, well, they haven't bought any, so there's an awful lot of buying in front of us.
Right.
And that very well may be the case. But I guess my question is, if they do start buying aggressively, how big is that window? Does the window keep getting smaller as the South American crop keeps getting bigger and bigger,
Yes.
right? So as Brazil has this big crop, now they don't need to come to the U.S. for a larger period of time. Then they do come to the U.S., they buy aggressively, but that window is very short because then you've got another Brazilian crop online shortly thereafter again. And I think that's probably the situation we're in.
China's going to come in and start buying some new crop beans pretty soon. That would be my prediction. And then what happens beyond that is going to be a function of how big is the U.S. crop, and then probably more importantly, how big is the South American crop. And then you fast forward to like, say, December, January next year, you've got a handle on the Brazilian crop. They'll cancel U.S. purchases if Brazil is big enough. They'll keep them if it's not big enough. There's a lot of things that can happen, but they're not going to avoid U.S. soybeans totally, I don't think.
We did have a flash sale of corn yesterday. U.S. exporters sold 5 million bushels of corn to Mexico. Of the total, 2 million bushels are for delivery during the current marketing year, and the remaining 3 million bushels are for delivery during the next marketing year.
Brian, you mentioned USDA maybe coming up with their corn demand numbers. Where is that going to happen?
I think corn for ethanol is a possibility for a slight adjustment higher. And I think if the USDA is anywhere close to what WASDE, Buenos Aires Grain Exchange, and some of the other outfits in South America are assessing for the Argentine corn crop, then it could also come in export form.
Cattle were off a little bit yesterday.
They sure were. Feeders were down 60 cents to $1.55 lower. Live cattle were down 45 cents to 90 cents lower. Box beef took another step lower. Choice ended the day at $295.39. That was down $1.28. Select ended the day at $285.76. That was down $2.49.
Any thoughts on cattle, Brian?
If August feeders take out $250, it's bad. You're probably dropping another $6 to $7 fast. And I still think my long-term analysis of cattle is bearish, big picture, and I think it's going to look completely different by the time we get to the end of the year into early 2025.
That's an interesting opinion. We talked about this at length in the premium stuff, guys, but there's a divergence. Brian has kind of a negative view of the charts, but we know that you guys are going to tell us, the cash cattle market and feeders in particular are on fire. But markets top on bullish news. Outside markets, U.S. dollars about flat. Stocks are up. Bonds are flat. Gold's up $45 this morning. We've got crude oil up 66 cents at $79.92 in the June WTI. Have a great weekend, guys. Report at 11. We'll talk to you Monday.